There are count them, four Beatles biopic movies on the way. Could this be the start of the Beatles Cinematic Universe? Let's find out. Hey everybody, it's Nick here with you. Welcome back to the Rock Squad channel. So today, some very big news dropped that British director Sam Mendes, director of films such as American Beauty, Road to Perdition, Skyfall, Spectre, in 1917, is going to direct 4 films based on the story of the Beatles. That's right, he's embarking on this very ambitious project that will see each film focus on a different member of the Beatles, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and each film will tell their story through their eyes, with each member kind of dovetailing in each other's stories and telling the story of the Fab Four. These films are being made with the full permission of Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, as well as Olivia Harrison and Yoko Ono, and the whole team at Apple Records, who must have been really impressed by Sam Mendes and Sony Pictures' pitch, because this is the first time we're getting an officially sanctioned film version of the story of the Beatles. Sam Mendes had this to say: "I'm honored to be telling the story of the greatest rock band of all time and excited to challenge the notion of what constitutes a trip to the movies." His production partner Pippa Harris added, "We intend this to be a uniquely thrilling and epic cinematic experience, 4 films told from 4 different perspectives which tell a single story about the most celebrated band of all time." So Mendes is putting together what a lot of people online are already calling the Beatles Cinematic Universe. And it kind of is, you think about it. You got 4 films with interconnected stories with the Beatles members crossing over into each other's movies. It is very easy to say that this is very Marvel-esque. And as a huge fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe myself, I got some posters from Marvel up here on the wall among the Oasis and Don Broco stuff. I'm a big fan of this approach, even if it's not superheroes, but one of my favorite bands in the Beatles. There's not really much more of an epic story than the story of the Beatles from their early days as teenagers through to the Hamburg years, and obviously them becoming a huge phenomenon, the whole Beatlemania thing, and then becoming the best band of all time going into their later years. It's an epic as hell story, and it deserves an epic approach. But at the same time, as big of a music fan as I am, I kind of hate music biopics. Yeah, I can't really off the top of my head think of any musical biopics that I really enjoy. And that's really weird for me, because I love music, I love movies, I just don't love movies about music. Unless it's a documentary about music. I love music documentaries. I could watch those all day long, but movies about musicians don't really appeal to me all that much. I find they often skip over huge parts of the story for narrative convenience, which is obviously understandable. You're trying to tell a story in a 2-hour movie, so obviously you have to condense things a little bit. I really hate the way they portray the process of making music as being really contrived in movies. Like anytime they show a scene of a band in a recording studio, it's always ridiculous. "Hey John, what are you working on?" "Well, Paul, I'm working on this new song called All You Need Is, and what's the word I should put in there?" "Well, how about love, John?" "All you need is love. That's it, Paul." I haven't even seen a lot of the music biopics that have come out over the last couple of years. I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody. I haven't seen Rocket Man, and even that new Bob Marley movie that's out right now, that just looks awful. That's probably my main fear with these new Beatles movies that Sam Mendes wants to make, is that they're going to present the glossed over, cheesy as hell, by the numbers version of the Beatles, which is something that a lot of Beatles fans definitely don't want. Hell, if the filmmakers go about this the wrong way, we could end up with an updated version of the Ruddles. Actually, that wouldn't be too bad. What is really going to matter with these 4 Beatles films is the casting. They have to get some young actors who are really good. They have to be great actors. You can't get any half-assers here. You have to get some great actors to play the 4 greatest musicians of all time. That's just got to happen. So 4 young actors, I guess some guys in their 20s, late teens into their 20s, to play the portray of the Beatles in this. And they have to be unquestionably English. There's nothing worse than casting Americans or Canadians as Brits and hearing their awful accents. It'd be like casting me for the film, although I do a good John Lennon. "As you can see, I'm talking in my John Lennon voice. What do you think?" Okay, I promise to never do that again. And thankfully, because this film has the blessing of all the relevant parties in the Beatles camp, they will have access to the Beatles music, which is key, because when it comes to musical biopics, we don't want to hear a bunch of Beatles sound-alikes. And then, of course, there is the question of which eras of the band they're going to portray in this film. How how far back they're going to go into each band member's history and where the story is going to end. Is it going to end up with the breakup in 1970? Is it going to go into the solo years? I would like to see as complete of a story as possible from beginning to end. I don't think they'll really go into the solo years, maybe some sort of epilogue in each of the band's stories. But at this point, if they're going to do 4 films, they have to be comprehensive and they have to be well told. And these movies aren't scheduled to come out for another 3 years. They're scheduled to come out sometime in 2027. We hope. That sounds like a long way off. So if you're a Beatles fan and you want to know more about their story, I highly recommend that you check out the Beatles anthology set from the 1990s. If you can track this down on DVD, it tells the Beatles story from beginning right through to the end, right to the breakup in 1970. It's the authorized story of the Beatles, and it's told by the Beatles. They have interviews with Paul, Ringo, and Paul, and then archived interviews with John Lennon. So really, if you're a Beatles fan, the Beatles anthology, you really can't get any better than this. The only thing is that it's extremely hard to track down. It's not available on streaming, even though it should definitely be on Disney Plus, along with Get Back and a lot of the other Beatles content on there. And the DVD set itself, it's still out there. It's out of print, I think, but you can still get third-party copies. It's selling for about $125 Canadian through third-party sellers on Amazon. And there actually is a really good Beatles biopic movie already out there called Backbeat. It came out in 1994 and starred Stephen Dorff as Stuart Sutcliffe, obviously the bass player of the Beatles, the early bass player who passed away very young. It told the story of the Beatles' years in Hamburg in the early 1960s, and actually really surprisingly good, even if some of the Liverpudlian accents are a little more than wonky. So I guess what I'm saying is these movies will have to do a lot to impress most Beatles fans, who I imagine are very skeptical of this news overall. I know I talked to a couple of friends of mine. They weren't really into the idea, but I guess we're going to have to give Sam Mendes the benefit of the doubt. But you know what? He better do right by these 4 lads from Liverpool. And it got me thinking, since this is the Beatles Cinematic Universe, which Avengers could each of the Beatles members be? And I think it's pretty obvious, okay? John would be Iron Man, right? I think that makes most sense, kind of the leader of the band, right? Paul McCartney would be Captain America because he's Mr. Clean. You know, he's, I guess, maybe Captain Britain in this case, but he's, you know, Mr. Clean. Paul McCartney, a very, very good boy, you know, and Paul McCartney never rocked the boat too much. And then we have George, I think, would be Thor, you know, kind of out there, kind of cosmic. And then Ringo would be the Hulk because the Hulk would be playing the drums and thumping like Ringo would be on the drums. And I think that's pretty darn accurate. Let me know what you think of these new 4 Beatles biopics in the Beatles Cinematic Universe in the comments below.